Salutations everyone, I'm Novalaxia. To celebrate 365 days of making actual YouTube content, I opened submissions for a question and answer video and got a few questions, so I figured I would answer them to celebrate this pretty big milestone. Let's get into the questions, why don't we? The first question asks, what do you believe draws people to Yu-Gi-Oh over other TCGs? From a visual standpoint, I think it has to be stylistic diversity. Many card games not based on existing IPs, like Magic the Gathering for instance, generally tend to stick with a set art style, but Yu-Gi-Oh often branches out in a wild variety of ways, which leads to a wide range of distinct archetypes that all look and play in very different ways. No two archetypes look and play in much the same way, which I think is something that helps with new players trying to find a deck that might be their thing compared to other TCGs. A really good example in recent memory might have to be the Melfi archetype, which is a pastel inspired forest animal archetype all based around very cute depictions of animals, and Melfi has seen competitive success in tandem with Sprite. There is definitely something there for everybody. When you compare Yu-Gi-Oh to something like Cardfight Vanguard, you notice that Cardfight Vanguard's art styles are very much restrained in some way by game design, as you can't mix and match clans in Vanguard the same way you can with archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh, though I'm speaking from somebody who last played in G era, so maybe take my opinion with a grain of salt there. Additionally, people often cite the game's complexity as a negative point, but I generally appreciate that the game is very free-form in comparison to other card games. I like that because of the fact there's no set rotation, you can come up with basically anything to innovate or to improve an existing deck or archetype in some way to make it competitively viable. This is something I personally appreciate as a factor in returning to Yu-Gi-Oh, though I can understand why it wouldn't be up to everyone's tastes, because you end up dealing with cards and mechanics that are just way too good compared to what you were used to in the past. Overall, I like Yu-Gi-Oh mainly because it's unfiltered chaos, and I really hope the game doesn't change that part of its identity anytime soon, because that's just kinda Kino, to be honest. The second question asks, what made you want to make Otoge related content? Also, who are your favorite Otoge YouTubers, if any at all? To answer the first question, I think my short and simple answer for what inspired me to make Otoge related content is there's basically no such thing as rhythm game content, despite how much material there actually is for video ideas. So in very simple terms, it's basically free money. A lot of people who make rhythm game videos often tend to do one of two things, and that's either long form documentaries on PC games like Geometry Dash or Clone Hero or Osu, or they tend to do what I really dislike, which is arcade game introduction videos. A lot of content creators, I really don't like that term, barely scratch the surface of interesting ideas when it comes to talking about the rhythm game genre, and the few that do either burn themselves out for no real reason or tend to cover the wider genre at large only really when it suits them. So that's kind of why I started making rhythm game videos, especially covering topics that I would find interesting, talking about BPL, talking about the need for community and for events, just generally elements that I think people have thought about but haven't exactly covered in videos themselves. There are some figures out there in the rhythm game scene who are actively trying to change this and make intellectually engaging content, so I do hope that there will be a catalyst for more widespread community discussion and coverage across all rhythm games, and not just a select few that so happen to get you the big bucks on Twitch. As for favorite Otoge YouTubers, I think probably one of the few I actually really enjoy watching consistently has to be Mitsuba. He hits that sweet spot of being good at his particular game, which is Beatmania 2DX, but he's actually quite good at Sound Vortex as well, judging from him actually reaching Imperial recently. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy his content, but it's not for everybody, especially if you don't understand Japanese. Two people ended up asking variations on the same question, so I ended up consolidating it into one submission, which is, how did you come up with your usernames? When it comes to Novalaxia specifically, I genuinely don't remember. It's been well over a decade since I first came up with this username, and if anybody does actually remember because I told you at some point, let's leave that in the past where it belongs. As for Arc, I'd say that username is a little bit more recent, so I can actually vaguely remember where I came up with it. When I started getting into arcade rhythm games, especially 2DX, I wanted to make my username Arcuade after the Tsukihime heroine, but there's a bit of a problem with that in that 2DX has a 6-character limit, and well, I couldn't fit Arcuade in there, so I ended up settling on Arc, because that's generally what people called Arcuade anyway. When I moved over to playing Sound Vortex full time, I kind of forgot that Sound Vortex has a 7-character limit, and by the time I actually bothered to have the ability to change my username, well, I mean, I was kind of already comfortable with Arc as is, and it didn't really bother me too much to bother changing it, so I just left it as it is. For what it's worth, the asterisk is meant to maintain some semblance of the lunar motif, but I'll let you be the judge of whether that conveys the appropriate nuance or not. For all the other usernames I might have, I genuinely don't remember where they came from. I can honestly tell you now, I come up with usernames because I think they're cool, and then I just kind of forget where I got the inspiration from. So yeah, I honestly can't answer this question in much detail because I genuinely don't think about usernames that much. Sorry, I suppose. Next question asks, what are your internet origins, and how did you start to create content, either written or in video format? That's a hard question, actually. I'd say between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Touhou, I probably wouldn't be this active on the internet if those two hobbies didn't essentially force me to be more social about my interests by virtue of obscurity. It's honestly kind of hard to pinpoint where exactly my internet origins are, but I guess I'm kind of like an 09er. I didn't really start using the internet properly until like 2008, 2009-ish, so around the time when Japan time on 4chan was still a thing. So if you remember that, that probably dates me a considerable amount. I think my start with content creation, I'll take a drink every time that term comes up, was sort of spread out throughout the 2010s, where I occasionally toyed with the ideas of blogs dedicated to something or other, and they're long lost to time now, but I've had writing ideas for a long time by this point, and I think that's what kickstarted the YouTube channel as it exists currently. I still want to experiment with the idea of writing fiction of some sort, but I'm basically just sort of going through both videos and written content through my blog, which is linked in somewhere actually, I don't remember where it's linked, but I'll make sure to link it in the description of this video if you're ever interested. This next question is a bit of a long one, so bear with me a little bit. What part of making actual YouTube videos takes the most time for you, between planning, shooting, editing, or something else entirely? And out of these things, which of them do you think of as a big draw of your channel? That's a really tough question to answer actually. I think planning and editing equally take up about the same amount of time within the video creation process for me, because oftentimes planning a video encompasses a number of factors that I have to think about, and it gets overwhelming very quickly if I'm not working back to back on video ideas, because I have to constantly readjust and get back into the swing of things, which is kind of awkward if you're making only like one video a month. Out of all of those things, I have to think about, do these ideas work for a video format? Can I convey my understanding of these ideas in an interesting manner? How much time will it take to rework segments if they don't fit my intended tone? And am I able to cut out irrelevant portions without compromising the end product? There's a lot of factors that goes into this stuff, and honestly, sometimes thinking about it gives me decision paralysis basically by proxy. As for editing the videos themselves, I still need to sit down and just plan to experiment with editing techniques that I think would look good. Generally speaking, I tend to focus on the principle that edits shouldn't distract from the content of your video, and that's why my work tends to remain relatively straightforward and samey, but I do make an effort to either learn or improve on one specific element with every new video I produce. In terms of gathering footage, I think that kind of sucks sometimes, because gathering suitable footage inevitably means you'll run into a section that has to be changed or edited or reworked entirely, and that's kind of annoying because I've had to rework a number of scripts solely because I could not find footage for it, and you can probably notice where these edits take place if you're paying enough attention. Personally, I'd like to believe that the current big draw of my channel is how I convey the topics of my videos. You could probably already figure it out by now, but my channel is mainly focused on very niche and very specific types of content. So focusing on that niche, even though I'm branching out, is still something that I'm relatively happy with, as making the Revue Starlight video in particular opened my eyes to what I feel video essays should be like, while the Assault Lily video quickly became my favorite work to edit simply because of how much I enjoyed the source material while producing the video. I hope that I can continue to make more interesting video ideas in the future, but obviously that comes with a lot of planning and a lot of work, so don't be too surprised if it takes a while to make a video at times, because I literally have to comb my brain for how I can convey it. The next question asks, what goes into making a series or rhythm game game enjoyable to you? Are there certain specific elements you look for? For most series, I often gravitate towards characters that make a work's premise stand out in execution, but strong world building is a plus I often accept as a substitute if other qualities don't necessarily keep me interested in the same way. Assault Lily is a recent example because the way that the characters in the world support each other by being closely intertwined with the series' general Aesop of human spirit, rather than being a narrative vehicle, just allows the massive cast to shine in a way that I don't think other multimedia IPs are able to capture in much the same kind of fashion. I don't mind subversive development in fiction, but I am much more appreciative of works that tend to just enjoy what they create, and do it without relying on self-deprecation or other sorts of tricks in order to maintain some sort of social relevancy. For rhythm games, I lean towards titles with simpler mechanics that have room for greater chart expression at higher levels. A lot of mobile games don't really hold my attention in the same way, because high and end level charts in those games often devolve into tests of how far a game can push the skill of the best players, rather than acting as an enjoyable challenge for people to eventually overcome in their own way. Sound Vortex and Tunithim do have charts that can be hard in exactly this fashion, but the games do contain enough variety in charting that you can build experience with enough time spent, rather than essentially playing into a charter or a game's hand of please beat this chart designed to attract spectators and random YouTube viewers. It's probably a little extreme to say it in that way, but I enjoy rhythm games when they don't use their unique mechanics or cool charts to justify wild spikes in chart difficulty at the expense of other gameplay elements. Next question. Out of all the video topics you've discussed, which one is closest to your heart and why? I've often said that the Assault Lily video is the project I enjoyed working on the most because of how much I loved the source material, but the Review Starlight video definitely gave me the most satisfaction out of the finished product. It's been a long time since I felt like I worked on a project that I could say I'm proud of, but that video gave me that moment one more time, and I'm grateful for being able to release it. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that every video topic I work on is close to my heart in some way, since I always justify video content by thinking I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't somewhat enjoy or otherwise feel passionate about the subject matter in question. That motivation certainly seems to be working if the positive comments I get are any indication, and that should be every question on the record. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question for this Q&A video, and once again, a massive thank you to everybody who's watched and supported my channel over the last year. It means a lot to me that people appreciate and enjoy these kinds of videos, and if anything, it motivates me to continue working on these even harder to make sure that the next video is even better than the last. I apologize if this Q&A video is a little brief, but I tried to avoid rambling as much as possible because people probably don't really want to hear me ramble for 20 minutes without any sort of real basis. So I tried to cut that down as much as possible while still trying to answer everybody's questions. That being said, I want to thank everybody for the support over the last year because it really means a lot to me. I'll see you all in the next video, but until then, I'm Novalaxia, signing off.